On today's episode of Let's Talk Dog Business, we have the one and only Sarah Whitehead. Now, we've spoken about far too many golden nuggets in this to be able to put it in an intro, so you're just going to have to listen. Hi, Sarah. How are you?
I am very well, thank you. This is so exciting to be here.
I know. I'm so excited to get you on.
For those that can actually see us, I'm in the corporate colours.
You are in the corporate colours. I know. We failed on the memo.
We did.
Didn't actually do our own corporate
I got the memo.
You did.
Extra points.
You get an A star.
Yeah.
I love it. I love it. So for everybody who's listening then, we are joined by the one and only, the amazing Sarah Whitehead. So Sarah, for those of you who, or for those of the listeners out there that may have no idea who you are, which would really surprise me, do you want to tell everybody a little bit about yourself and kind of how you've got to where you are now?
Well, that's very lovely. I think, I never quite know what to say, really. I mean, I think I've been very, very lucky in many ways in terms of the longevity of my career, should we put it like that? So you have to understand, although in my head I'm only 27, I have actually been doing this job as a behaviourist and trainer for I think it's 35 years. So it's quite a long time. And kind of when I started out, there weren't really any qualifications. I mean, it sort of feels almost unbelievable to people who are of an age where they can still kneel down and run around and things like that. But if you kind of my generation, you will remember that there was Barbara Woodhouse on TV, who actually was kind of a bit of my inspiration, I've got to confess. And then kind of straight from there into this hiatus of that you could being a trainer or a behaviourist wasn't a thing, it just wasn't. And so I was very lucky that I met John Fisher, who some people remember, maybe know him through his books and other work, and through a very circuitous route became his head of practice. And in between did the first ever MSc in clinical animal behaviour that was offered pretty much in this country, and became a full member of the APBC, a certified clinical animal behaviourist, etc., positive dog trainer. But more than that, when I look back, it's been interesting as I've been doing some clutter clearing at home, which is always a healthy thing to do, isn't it?
Of course.
And, make space for new dog beds or whatever it is you do. And
new dogs.
New dogs, yeah. Millions of dog beds. Buying a dog bed addiction. And what it struck me was that it's easy to kind of forget all the things, the places I've been, the things that I've done, amazing experiences that I've had. And actually it was kind of like an inventory going through some of my stuff, because just little things like nobody had really heard of clicker training in this country. And I was incredibly fortunate. I went out to one of the American APDT conferences a good 35 years ago. And not only did we have a blast out there, we had a great time, but I also saw for the very first time clicker training being used in a live demo, actually, with Karen Pryor. And at the time, she had a business partner, training partner called Gary Wilkes, and they used to do a kind of double act on stage doing clicker training. It was the first time I'd seen it. I was just absolutely blown away by it, and came back and transformed all my training classes into clicker training classes that same year, which was extremely controversial at the time. Not so much. So yeah, it's been interesting, and I think I've as I said, I've been very fortunate with the diversity and the range of different things that I've done as part of my career. But right now, I'm still writing lots of books. I'm actually writing. I've just written the structure for my next dog book.
Oh, this is exciting!
Yeah, exclusive.
Oh,
you heard it here first.
Heard it here first. And I'm still doing lots of private behaviour work and referral from vets, which I still really enjoy doing, but it does have its challenges. I'm still mentoring people, and I'm doing actually quite a bit of corporate work too, and some interesting stuff around my passion around feline behaviour, which I think is gradually getting its own little bit of exposure finally.
Oh, Yeah, I remember you saying going down the feline route a little bit more. It's it's something that you see creep up every now and again, don't you? And it's something that pops up in a lot of your client work, if there's certainly a cat involved with a dog anyway.
Absolutely. And I sort of think that even if you're an absolute steadfast dog person through and through, if you're, in this industry, you actually can't avoid having to know something about cat behaviour, because it will happen at some point that there's going to be, an introduction, or that, somebody brings a puppy home and it's chasing an existing cat or whatever. So I do think it's really critical people have the kind of fundamentals of knowledge about feline behaviour. But also, above and beyond that, I think that we can, as canine behaviourists and trainers, we can learn a lot from feline behaviour in terms of its ethology. And I think there's been a lot of skating over the surface of what perhaps another species can teach us.
Yeah. Oh, I love all of this. It's so interesting. I've missed our chat, Sarah. I always used to love these little insightful things.
At this point, you have to tell me what you two have been doing.
I like this.
She's spinning it round on us.
Spun it already, yeah. Well, yeah, so I suppose we've kind of mentioned before on the podcast that early in my career, like Sarah, you were a massive influence for me. And, I think we worked together for about 12 months-ish. And it was a turning point in my career, actually, to really go, I can do something. And I've got an amazing mentor behind me that I can lean on and ask questions to. And it's something that I don't think is very prevalent in this industry. It's something that I don't think you come across all that often unless you are actively going out and seeking it. And it's something that we talk a lot about in going, when you are out there, because it is quite a lonely job, isn't it? You are just out there by yourself in your car with clients. And there's not necessarily someone to always bounce any ideas off of. And I think this is where some Facebook groups have become really big, with lots of people batting forth ideas. And I'm sure I've done it on another podcast episode before.
About them, yeah.
But it's a bit questionable, isn't it, on like the reliability of those groups and what type of information you're getting. And
also, don't you think the fear of what somebody's going to say back?
Yeah.
If someone asks a genuine question, sometimes it's like you get wrath of a barrage of abuse. And, it's not, people are a little bit worried to ask and put themselves out there. So for us, we're trying to change all of that and try and make it a bit more inclusive, aren't we?
Yeah. Yeah. Really make it so that actually you can genuinely ask questions and not be slated for it, ridiculed, all of the stuff, I suppose.
Other people's agendas.
Yeah, that's it. And it is something, what are your thoughts on, I suppose, like the state of the industry at the moment? Because obviously you've been in it for a long time. And, you've probably seen it go through different shifts and all of this. So what, in your honest, most raw opinion right now, where would you, or what are your thoughts on the industry at this moment in time?
Yeah, I was pondering this yesterday, actually, because I had another very, very respected colleague in the industry tell me that she was stopping. And
right.
And I think that there is a bit of a kind of risk that I have an age bias thing going here. Actually, it's not an age bias thing, it's an experience bias thing. But I think there's a kind of a risk that we're going to end up with really very few people who are still practicing, who have been, doing the work for a long time, have a lot of experience, and have. And when I say no agenda, of course, we've all got an agenda, but no agenda in terms of being competitive with other people in the industry. And it concerns me. And it's sort of, I want to be really, I'm upbeat, I'm positive, I'm always optimistic about, most things in life. However, I think that we are in a particularly difficult phase for people who are, whose hearts are in this industry, who really want to do the right thing, really want to make a go of it, but also need to pay the mortgage or, buy dog food. And I think that, when I first started, we used to sort of laugh a little bit because actually it was a massively female dominated industry, as it still is, but even more so, I think. And yet, a bit like the kind of the chefing world, the very few voices that were heard were all male. I think I'm allowed to say that now. I mean, if I'd have said that at that point, everybody would stand me. But it was true. It was kind of dominated by 5 or 6 very strong male voices. And I'm going to stick my neck out, most of whom weren't actually practicing. Some were, but many weren't. And yet kind of it felt like the rest of the industry was predominantly female, working incredibly hard, kind of kind of taking the rap for it, and yet not getting kind of not even the recognition, but the actually kind of like what I would describe as the airtime. And for example, I can clearly remember doing auditions for TV programs at that stage, and going to publishers and pitching books and book ideas, and I'm being asked openly in conversations and interviews for those things whether I had a male colleague who could do the same thing as me because they preferred to have a man on screen, or is there somebody who could collaborate with you on this book because it's better if we have a man's name on the book cover.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, that's shocking.
It is.
Really, yeah, I mean, really fundamentally, all the stuff that we talk about openly now, but it was very covert at the time and very prevalent. And then I think things did improve and did even up as time has gone on. But yeah, all the way through the 35 years, what is slightly depressing is that there have always been what I would describe as different political affiliations and kind of when I say politically, I don't mean with a capital P, but kind of, people, little splinter groups that, somebody would try and set something up that was collaborative, and then there'd be a little splinter group that didn't agree with their principles, one element of their, code of practice or whatever it might have been. And then, before you know it, you've got 60 different groups, or, probably even more than that, who are all under the kind of title of professional associations. And then I think it makes it extremely difficult for people to know which is which to pitch for, which to, whose goals to aim for, who to affiliate with. I think it's really difficult for people. I mean, I can barely keep up with all the initials and things.
Same, yeah. We always get confused with them, don't we?
Yeah.
And I've been in it for a long time and seen most of them form. So it's kind of like, if I can't keep a track, I just think it's so difficult for other people, particularly if you're relatively new, incoming to this business. I think it's very, very hard to know. So I suppose in a way, choice is always good. The positives are that there's a lot more information out there for people, both kind of from a public point of view, if you like, and people that with the client point of view, but also from the professional point of view. There's a lot more choice, information, access. But there's a flip side to that, which is there's a lot more choice, information, and access, which means you have to have a way of being able to discern what's right for you. And I think that's really difficult. So does that fit with your experience?
Yes,
yeah,
absolutely.
Very much so. And then we haven't even touched on how the public perceive all of those things.
Or the veterinary profession, or
oh God, the veterinary profession.
Yeah.
It's tough for them as well. They don't necessarily know. If we have trouble discerning between all these different,
how are they gonna? Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I can honestly say the really good thing that I did in my kind of early to mid 30s is I made a policy decision. Now, if you're starting out in this industry, one of the things that first bit of advice today is create yourself some policies. Now, that sounds really tedious, doesn't it? But the reality is, if you have a policy about something, even if it's in your own head, I mean, write them down if you're that way inclined, but even if they're only in your own head, it saves you an awful lot of emotional and mental energy when somebody asks you a question and you go, oh, I don't know, that kind of rubs up the wrong way. It doesn't feel like that really fits my principles, but I'm not really sure. And maybe I should for this person. If you have a policy in place, yes, you can always change your policy. You should review your policies on an annual basis. I always have cups of tea before 10 o'clock. Now I'm going to change that into the year. They're your policies. You make the decision. But it's one of the things that I did take away from a bit of corporate life early on, which is that if you have a policy and you say to somebody, I'm really sorry, but that's my policy, it kind of takes it away from it being personal, which is actually a very helpful thing from your relationship with them. But it also takes it away from being personal for you, really. So one of the things that I did is I made a policy, kind of say mid-30s, where I just made a decision. My policy was I'm never going to be on a committee again. And it has served me very well, I can tell you.
And have you stuck to it?
I have, because it's my policy.
Love it.
That's to me. I have to stick to the policy.
I do. I love it.
Actually, for me, personally speaking, that has been it was a stroke of genius, and I've stuck to it because for me, I'm not a person that I can't cope with the kind of that whole committee thing of it's like Dad's Army, isn't it? Committees.
Yeah.
There's the guy who wrote Dad's Army said he based it on his village hall.
Yeah, I was just thinking of a village hall committee and what the hoops you have to go through to get in.
It's great if you are one of those characters, then you'll fit right in. But if you're not, you'll bang your head against an awful lot of village hall brick walls.
Village hall walls, yeah.
I like it. Yeah. I'd say we do something similar, don't we? So we're always suggesting to people, and it's something that we live and breathe in our world, in both businesses, in both the training business and our business coaching one, that setting yourself with your own set of values, your integrity bits, and however you want to display that, it allows you to be able to say, if you are genuinely taking a potential client call and there's something that doesn't feel quite right about it, you can take that decision based on your values and your integrity to go, I'm really sorry, I just don't think we're a good fit for each other, and you do not have to take that work. Yeah. And by having that set of values, that policy, that's something to fall back on, like you say, is really helpful, because then you're I don't have to justify anything. I don't have to go into all of the reasons and everything. And I think it's actually really respected when somebody from a receiving end, then they'll go, oh, well, you know what, that's absolutely fine. I wouldn't want you to go against your values and all of that. And I'm like, no, thank you. I appreciate that. And I wish you well. Go and speak to this trainer over here. It's just not for me.
Yeah. The problem, of course, with that, though, is that people feel they're going to lose out on the work, and it takes a lot for them to turn somebody away, because, of course, we need all the kind of thought is that we need the work, we need, to take everybody on and everything on. And again, this is kind of part of what we're trying to do, is to say you don't have to take everything on, and you can be a little bit picky with what you actually want to do and what you actually love, and, niching if that sort of is that what you want to do, that's fine. So it's having that ability to be flexible. And if I'd have known that when I started out, I would have looked at it totally differently. But you can see why everybody just takes on everything and is a jack of all trades. And that's where burnout happens, isn't it? And that's where all the frustration of the clients, that they aren't committed and they're not putting the work in. And I think that's where it all comes from. And then you're up against this uphill struggle then to kind of fall back in love with it again. And we want people to just from the outset go, this is what I want to do, this is what I want to take on, this is what I don't, and be really comfortable with that.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I couldn't agree more. I think that there's some interesting factors in the types of people and personalities that are drawn to this industry as well. We're
finding a real trend actually with this. Yeah.
Well, it probably hasn't changed at all in all the years that we've been. And that's interesting too, because that means that then the fit it's especially important that the fit is right. So I read a very interesting article actually only yesterday about does work define you? Does the type of work that you do define you as a human? If you meet somebody at a party, nearly always one of the first three questions will be, what do you do? An event or whatever. And it's very interesting that, that kind of that's so integral to our identity and to our behaviors and our belief systems and our values. And, the article is actually questioning, whether our personalities pick the work that we do, or whether the work over time alters our personalities. It's really kind of
it's an interesting angle, isn't it?
It is interesting.
And because I think it's all very well saying to your, I'm going to pick a terrible big generalization here, but in my mind, if you're kind of an organized person who very much likes detail, is perhaps more of a theorist rather than a social relator, that type of personality, and I know this is sort of a bit out of trend to talk about types of personality, but that type of personality might be drawn to doing bookkeeping or accounting, or something where it's very systemized and data driven, rather than being kind of social, relating towards people on a daily basis. Or it may not, but that's kind of a generalization. And yet, how many people actually kind of left school or university saying, "Oh, I put my hand in the air when they said who wanted to be a bookkeeper." Probably not that many. I mean, I said, it wasn't something that was kind of offered when I was around. And so I think, then do you develop more of those kind of personality traits because you're doing that kind of work, and you're surrounded by those kinds of people, so you're effectively kind of fitted into a system, and then you develop your skills in those areas, and you become much more, not just much more proficient in those areas, but you take on some of those kind of personality traits as a result. And I think that's really an interesting thing, because when I was doing my MSc for my clinical animal behaviour MSc course, and I was doing my dissertation. I mean, some people have heard me talk about this before, but I basically chose to do for a dissertation, I did a research study on, in fact, we didn't tell people what it was about, but it was about stress in behaviour counsellors and trainers. And it was about how people who had chosen to be in that role either coped with the stresses of it or didn't. And I was incredibly fortunate that I managed to, I basically stalked the poor guy, actually, in retrospect, but I basically managed to get one of the top professors in occupational psychology to give me his research methods, and then to oversee them. And to cut a very long story short, when I first submitted the results to him, I had a very, very terse message back from his PA saying, that the professor has reviewed your initial results from your research study looking at this large population of behaviour counsellors and trainers, and he says, please, can you do all the data crunching again, because there's clearly some massive statistical error, which when you're doing your MSc dissertation is like the most appalling thing that could ever happen to you. It's like the world's just is around your feet. And I had to go back to my supervisor, who was Dr. John Bradshaw, actually, who some people will know from his cat work and lots of research. And I went back to him and had to say, look, I'm really sorry, John. This is the response that I've had from Professor Cooper, and we need to do this again. And so bless him, he gave me a postgraduate, poor guy, and who was there doing some lecturing, I think. And I think I paid him a bit of money, and probably John found some budget, and we went through all the data all over again, and it was exactly the same. And the bottom line is that the result was that behaviour counsellors and trainers showed more occupational stress in more of the what are described as the critical areas, like health, addiction, most likely to have relationship issues, most likely to have very serious health problems related to ongoing long-term chronic stress. And the results in my group, in our group, were worse than any other group he had ever seen, including psychiatric nurses, dentists, who up to that point were the highest in the suicide rate, our highest level of people taking their own lives in that category kind of group. He was just absolutely gobsmacked by it. And then, of course, we had to come up with, you're looking very concerned, both of you, by the way.
Really shocked.
I'm actually thinking, I'm not surprised. I just think
I'm shocked, but I'm not. Because
it just goes to show, actually, that, if anything, it fuels the fire in my belly even more to want to get this message out to people and everybody listening that something needs to change. Because I reckon if you used to redo that study again now, it'd be interesting to see if there is a shift or if it's actually worse.
I actually think it's worse.
Yeah, I would agree.
My neck out, I'll say this is purely Sarah science.
I love Sarah science. I missed Sarah science.
Sarah science is terrible, but at least I'm honest about it. But I absolutely think it would be worse now. And I think so. You're interested to hear my fundamental thoughts behind why it is.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah. That's the next question. Yeah.
So I think there are really three main reasons. I think that the first is that you are drawn to this work because you are probably, and I'm going to also be probably for some people slightly politically incorrect here, because I'm going to use a kind of generalization, which is type A characteristics. You are vocational, you are passionate, you are independent-minded, you are somebody who actually is probably finds it difficult to fit into a conventional working life. Like you like to be able to control your own hours, you like to have options about the kind of work that you do. You're curious, you're interested, you're most likely to have blood group A than other people. Isn't that incredible?
Oh my God, it goes down to blood group.
Wow. I don't even know what blood group I am.
By the way. So we are a kind of a slightly different group than perhaps those who are more accepting of reality as it stands. We want to make changes. We see things that we find upsetting because we regard them as being unjust, either to the animal or to the people. We are passionate about kind of truth, accountability and responsibility. This all ticking boxes.
God,
yes.
she's describing you here.
Everything. I'm like internally ticking. Yeah.
Also incredibly hard on ourselves. That internal dialogue, that little demon that tells you, you're not good enough, that other people are better, that you shouldn't be doing this, that, you could have done better for that dog that you saw 35 years ago. I have that still in my head, all of this, the perfectionism side of it is absolutely up there in type A characteristics in people who kind of show this kind of profile. So we are already prone to the difficulties of life, if you like, and particularly the difficulties of doing what we regard as a vocational job. This is not something we go into because we want the money or the standard hours. Anyone who's thinking that got news for me. So that's the first thing, is the type of people who are attracted to do the work. Then the second thing is that we are dealing with a group of people and animals who are mostly novices. Now, that sounds like a really obvious thing to say. Of course we are, because otherwise we probably wouldn't need our help. But how many riding instructors do you know who, when somebody rocks up for their first ever riding lesson, says, "I'm so pleased you're here for your first ever riding lesson. It's fantastic. We're going to do brilliantly today. And here's your pony. And your pony has never been ridden before either."
Good point. It's very true.
Really good point.
You have got two beings who don't speak the same language yet, and who have probably equal ineptitude, let's be honest.
Yeah.
And not only that, but the human part of the framework here has got very high expectations about what's going to happen with this animal. They think they're going to be doing the equivalent of show jumping within the first 5 riding lessons, if you understand my metaphor. And yet the reality is that, even for those of us who think we're pretty good at training, or at least pretty experienced at training, I still taking my baby fluffy thing to agility. I've done probably now, I would guess, 15 lessons at agility. And I go, and sometimes she goes, "Tunnel, I've never seen that before. And I'm a trainer." And that is because she's a living, sentient being with a mind of her own, which is also what makes her magical. But that combination of two novice creatures, one of which has very high expectations, leads us poor type A perfectionist people down a path of doom and disaster. Because a lot of this is terribly negative, and I don't want to make it sound like that. But what I want you to see in a kind of almost humorous way is that this is a kind of equation which is almost guaranteed to have some tricky results, because we are vocational, passionate perfectionists who see all the little nuances. We also see opportunity. So we see what that dog can be, what that relationship can be like, how brilliant that can be. If only, dot, 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 fill in the blank. And yet the person involved nearly always wants, I'm not going to say quick fix, because I think we have had some really good education, and things aren't the same as they were 25 years ago, and people do understand that they need to input the time and energy and effort, but they still woefully underestimate the energy, time and effort that they will need to put in. It's way more than they think, and it's going to last way longer, and the result is going to be less perfect than they ever imagined, probably. That's because that's reality, isn't it? Those things. And then I think the third thing that predisposes us to such incredible, intense, difficult levels of stress in the industry is, and I won't put it as the lack of support, but I'll put it as the lack of collaboration. So the competitive nature of the industry, as it's always been, and as I think it's become, I think it's become so in different ways now. And that leaves opportunity, unfortunately, for people who are prepared to shout really loudly, or who are good at shouting, which those two things are both prevalent, I think, and that then makes or can have this effect on the rest of the sort of population in the industry, who it then taps into their "I'm not good enough. Why would somebody ever pick me? There's not enough work to go around." All of that stuff, and I think those three things combined are very, very powerful in terms of, if I was describing it purely in dog training terms, it puts us on a random reinforcement schedule that is very difficult to deal with emotionally.
Yeah, it's very eloquently put, all of that. That's like everything in my head. Said so much better. But no, you do see it all the time, don't you? You see people getting. I mean, we only had a message this week, I'm sure, on our Facebook group saying that I'm giving up. I need a break. I'm burnt out. Yeah. I'm not doing it anymore. And we're like, this needs to stop happening. And I loved part of that story there where you're explaining about the two novices being together and how actually I do think people forget that. And I think that can be something that we can, air quote, fix internally in industry by having a change in our mindset and stopping almost providing these services like we were back in the 90s of just these pay-as-you-go sessions. And we know now a lot more. We know that we're working with two novices. We know that people are incredibly time poor nowadays as well. They haven't got the capacity to take on all of this stuff that's out there. There's definitely a lot more, like you say, of the people out there who are willing to shout louder and do bigger. And, one name comes to mind at the moment that's really prevalent, which is Southend Dog Trainer. And love him or hate him, his business model is bloody brilliant because he's everywhere. And the public know all about him, industry know all about him. And I think this is where, us sitting on that positive side, I do think it's where we fall down, because we are, for some reason, more competitive with one another when we shouldn't be. It should be so much more collaborative. We still are behaving like we were in the 90s with offering these pay-as-you-go sessions. And it's something that we've been shifting for the last several years now. In anybody who works with us in our training programs, they come on board with us for a minimum of a 4-month program. And ideally it's a 6-month program, because we've got to educate two novices, take them on the journey, be mindful of the fact that they are incredibly time poor, and they need support. And you just can't do that with 1 or 2 sessions. I don't care how good you are.
And then
people
layer that even further by putting 6 or 8 novices in a tiny village hall together. Well, we didn't even mention that, did we?
Oh, yeah. And let's add some really bad acoustics and a slippery floor.
Yeah. There's so many bad things about it when you look at it. And yet everybody does it.
Yeah.
Why? Why are we doing it? Why are we putting everybody through it? Why are we putting the dogs through the stress? Why are we putting the humans through the stress? Why are we putting ourselves through the stress as trainers? Yeah. Because we're never satisfied from a group environment. The way it's traditionally set up. We do groups, but we do it differently. So you go, why? Just step back and look at what we're doing.
Yeah. And it is interesting because when you're talking about the types of personality as well, I can definitely see a lot of that personality in me, but I don't think it's 100% me.
I think it's 100% me.
It is you. I was thinking that. So I was like, yeah, you.
We were only having a conversation about being advocates for friends and putting yourself in positions that you really don't want to be put in yourself in.
Oh, yeah.
And me going, Vicky, what are you doing? Like, you're putting yourself out there. You're kind of making life hard for yourself, but I cannot stop myself. It's really hard to stop myself.
It's interesting, isn't it?
Yeah.
But yeah, it's true, isn't it? It's like whether that experience, like you say, kind of guides you to how you are, or if it is actually who you are. I'm definitely grey. That is how I can describe my internalness. Like, I can see lots of the qualities of your typical type A dog trainer, behaviourist. But then I think, I don't know if it's my corporate experience of like 15 years that has made me go, do you know what? I actually need to look at this like a business, because I do need to replace a full-time income. I've got a family to look after. Yes, I want to do well for the dogs, and yes, I want to do really well for the people. But for me, I kind of learned pretty quick that's like, I don't want to be in a position where I'm staying awake in the middle of the night thinking I can't do any more for that dog or that person. And I don't know if that is my personality, but I feel like with the model we've created by working with somebody over a long period of time, we've then created such a good relationship with them that I just don't have that fear, because I'm working with them and they're always talking to me. We know it's a journey, and everyone's coming at it from the same lens. No one's thinking, everyone's expectations are well managed, even from that initial inquiry coming in.
I was just about to use that expression. I think it's about managing expectations, and if you can do that right at the outset, then that's just that. It really is 80% of the battle, isn't it? I really think so. And I'm just going to finish off in terms of like the research and my dissertation, etc. 2 things that were really fascinating about it. One is that I went across the board in terms of who I surveyed. So even at that, well, especially at that stage, because this is quite a long time ago now, there were people in that cohort that I surveyed who were out and out positive punishers. They described themselves as aversion trainers, or using aversives. And then there was right across the board to positive reinforcement only, trainers, and the kind of the new fangled clicker trainers, as we're going to call it. Not necessarily using a clicker, but using condition reinforcers. And do you know what was amazing was it made no difference at all to people's stress levels or perception of the work, which camp they were in, which I find really fascinating. Actually, that's a whole nother research project right there, waiting to be done by somebody, but very interesting. And the second thing is, which is more serious, and we then have to talk about something much more lighthearted, but which is more serious, which is that unfortunately, all this, the chronic stress and the expectations mismanaged, and the lack of understanding understanding that he's got to pay the mortgage, but the lack of ability to make it into a business that pays the mortgage, etc. So in other words, you're not getting the rewards for your random reinforcement, which is happening to you every single day emotionally, is extremely serious. It's not just that you're a bit stressed and touchy with your other half. It's heart disease, it's cancer, it's early strokes, it's chronic long-term illness, it's serious mental health problems. All of which we're much better now at going, this, the body keeps the score, to use somebody else's, title. But we're much better at recognizing that now. And yet still, when it's ourselves, it's still very odd to say, potentially I can see that long term this might make me unwell, or this might destroy my relationship, or, this might, lead me to wake up one morning and say, I just can't do this anymore. And which also means that, of course, your clients, potential future clients, miss out as well. It's not in any way trivial. It's very important that we nail this stuff. So, I get kind of a little bit frustrated by people saying, I think I've got imposter syndrome. What I want to say to you is, no, you've got type A syndrome. This is your personality. This is who you are. And so, really from the point of view of saying, can I do this, or do I feel good enough? For me, it's not about having that internal dialogue. It's much more about how can I see the success? How can I create the success by however I define success, whether that's financial or case, responses, or how you feel about it, or the network that you create, and how do you personally define success, and then chase that, because that's the thing that will bring longevity if you want it to, I think, in this work.
Yeah, no, I love it. I think it's it is it's something has to change, and this is why it is our mission to get this message out to as many people as possible. Mm-hmm. So please do share this episode far and wide, because it is it is an important topic, and I don't think we do take it seriously enough. And it's something that infuriates Vicky and myself, in that people are in this choice world now, like we were saying earlier, about all of the different accreditations, qualifications, CPD, whatever you want to call it, all the dog knowledge. You can keep chasing it, and you can keep putting a shiny badge on your website, and you can keep doing all this stuff. But in reality, is that going to put food on the table? And it might sound a little bit crass that we have to look at it like that when we are so emotionally attached to, that emotional outcome of the dog and the person. I mean, let's face it, sometimes nobody cares about the people, it's just the dogs. But we have to factor all of this stuff in, and it's something we do feel like we bang on about it, but because it's so important, and it's something that we're really passionate about, and going, if you stop looking at your business like a hobby and actually start treating it like a business, you get to do all of the amazing things that you want to do whilst looking after your health and well-being. Because I totally get it. Like I would quite easily categorize myself as a workaholic. Vic wakes up to me most mornings with messages from me at like 3:00 onwards because my brain doesn't switch off. But I'm very, very aware of it, and I know how to manage my time around it. It's different when I feel like I have to do all of those things. And I think that's a key differentiator for a lot of people in this industry, that they're in this almost like a hamster wheel, isn't it? Like you're just constantly doing the same thing day in, day out, and just hoping someday it'll change.
But this is why they chase the new thing, isn't it? Because they're like, oh, this new craze has come out. If I'm the first person that does it, everybody's going to buy it. And then this is another challenge we have, is that dog trainers don't look at it from the client perspective. Is that something the client really needs? Is it something that they're going to benefit from? And is it really going to get the result they need and want? Because if it doesn't, why bother? And again, that might sound really, crass is probably the word, and really kind of cutting. But at the same time, maybe look at it like we could incorporate some of it in, but do we have to have it as a standalone service that they purchase? Like, is it going to work? And I think that's the biggie, is that step away from it yourself and just put yourself in the client position. And that's what we need people to do more of.
Yeah, couldn't agree more, actually. In fact, some years ago, I decided that if I was taken to another planet and dropped on new planet, dog, and there were dogs there, and then unfortunately they put people there as well. No, I'm joking. Humans are my favourite animals, so that's okay. But if I was plopped onto a new planet where nobody had ever heard of dog training, and yet quite clearly there was a need to create communication systems between these two species, how would I do it? It's a good question, isn't it? glass of wine late one night. Ask yourself if it was a completely brand new model, how would you do it? How would you structure it? How would you set it up? The one thing's for sure for me is that I wouldn't put 8 novice teams in a shiny floored village hall. I made that decision a very long time ago. That wasn't the ideal plan for kind of first out of the trap. We can't even communicate with this new puppy at home without saying no to it. Let alone be able to get its attention when it's got 7 other puppies, other people in the room. And so I think if we were to say to ourselves, well, it needs to be a completely brand new model, what would the client want? What would be their ideal? And the really interesting, one of the interesting answers that I came up with for that was actually that, in all honesty, if my computer breaks down, if my computer goes on the blink, I actually don't want to buy an online course in how to fix my computer. Neither do I want to take it to someone who, on a one-to-one basis over 5 to 6 months, shows me how to fix it. I just don't. I'm not, I just want it to work. We just want it done. Now, I appreciate that there are other people out there who love the internal workings of, Intel systems or whatever. That, appreciate that. I'm not everybody, but I am a majority probably of computer users. I would say I'm in the bell curve of that. And so, if that's true of dog clients as well, maybe there is a very big market that nobody has really tapped into yet. Well, not in mainstream, which is the kind of training for somebody else.
Interesting.
We're doing this.
We've just started doing it.
You have a ton. I mean, I've done, quite a bit, and I've got people in my practice who've done quite a bit, very, very successfully, because you've got the experience and the understanding and the knowledge. They're time poor, but they're prepared to pay for it. And the reason why it hasn't been done very much, and I know there are people listening to this right now throwing their hands up in horror going, yes, but, and they're giving me 10 reasons in their minds right now as to why it doesn't work or won't work. But one of the big reasons why we tend to approach that sort of idea with a negative, bias is because in the past it's been done really badly. So it's been, it's given it a really bad reputation, that the kind of whole dog borstal thing, you send your dog away, they beat it up for a couple of weeks, send it back. Oh, look, it's, no better. In fact, if anything, it's probably even worse, and you're, $6,000 poorer. But that doesn't mean to say the model has to be like that, of course. So, I've got an amazing colleague who I will occasionally send what I describe as annoying celebrity clients to, because they're not my bag at all. So I'm much more down to earth. I probably don't know who they are, but she really enjoys schmoozing with celebrity clients, particularly when they fly her to Monaco to train their dogs for them for a fortnight.
Oh.
I
wouldn't mind going to Monaco.
I was going to say, this sounds good.
On the list when it comes up again. No, that's obviously a memorable one. She had a good time. And the outcome was achieved. The dog's dramatic improvement in their behaviour and training. The client's happy, she's happy, she had a great time. She didn't have to deal with the people very much, which she likes, because actually, part of her type A-ness is that really she likes to work with the dogs. She doesn't actually really love to work with the people much at all. Yes, they're there and she'll help them and she'll do all the transferring over of the skill sets and all that stuff and the communication. But the bottom line is that actually what those dogs needed was time invested in them with a really, really good trainer who understood behaviour inside out. And that's what they got. So I don't think that there's an interesting future model there for those who are...
Yeah.
Jo, it's interesting this is, because you're not the first person to have said this recently to us, actually.
No, and we have been dabbling with it for the last 12 months-ish. I've even dabbled with, instead of doing a board and train, just because I've got the kids and I can't be bothered having all these dogs in my house now, I'll do a sit and train. So I'll just go and move into someone's house. Husband doesn't like it too much because then he's like, what, you leaving me with the kids for a week and the dogs and the chickens? I'm like, yes, you're a big boy. You can
Bye.
I'm going to go play with some dogs. But I think it's really important. Again, like, you have to really understand who you are as a person. You have to truly understand the clients that you are either wanting to attract or are attracting, because I think sometimes they could be two very different things. Looking at all that stuff and how you want to run your business, how you want to be known, what value you can add and how, and all of these things start to come in. So our Trained For You model, we don't actually outwardly advertise it because for us, we want to make sure that we attract a certain type of client. We want a client that is willing to listen a little bit and wants to educate themselves into how they can understand their dogs a little bit more. So they come on board our longer term program where we get to do some of that coaching. We get to do some of that one-to-one work. We get them practicing some skills. And then if we can see that they're struggling, then we've got, hey, do you know what? Let's do this. And because the relationship's there and because they know that it's coming from a place of sincerity and the integrity and it's all, it's all done from love, they're like, I'm in. I'm totally in. And from a business bottom line, it works beautifully because then the investment can be higher. You've got a happy client. You get to work the dogs more. You get that client that client retention. So they're more likely to stay with you, which is then when we insert our follow-on programs as like check-ins and accountability. But guess what? You're tied into a membership model. So it works really nice. And then they're more likely to refer you because they've had a really nice experience all round.
And you're feeding your heart because what you're also doing is giving that dog or dogs the best 40 minutes, hour, whatever, of their entire week or day or, possibly lifespan. So it does tick an awful lot of boxes. When you think about it, there's, again, when you look at other business models in other industries, they would probably look at how we run training and behaviour as, going into insanity. Because, it just doesn't, it is training the novice rider to, ride the horse that's never had a saddle on its back.
Yeah. And it also gives us an opportunity to really get to know that dog away from that owner and see exactly the things that
you see so much more.
You do see so much more. And it's really nice because you can kind of almost put yourself in the place of the owner a little bit and go, I understand why they're really struggling with this because my God, we're struggling with it a little bit. And just again, drilling it, repetition, all of that stuff we can start instilling into that dog. They can then take over that and it'd be much more pleasant for the owner as well. So I'm loving it. I'm loving working like this.
Yeah, it's kind of reignited our passion.
The passion's come back a bit.
Yeah, it's really interesting, isn't it? Because actually, the bottom line is we like training things. We do. We love it. And the more quirky, very often, again from a Type A point of view, maybe not for Joe, but for you and I, Vicky, I think the more
I'm half
quirky.
Type A.
A minus.
Yes, I'll take it.
The kind of the more quirky the needs are, the more I love it. So if I'm in that, if I was in that position and I was thinking, okay, so my client, has some special requirements in terms of like their physical ability, or perhaps even something like I had a lady who had eyesight problems. She had sight problems. So I'm then like, okay, she really wants to play tug with this dog. This dog, I need to get this dog to actually put the toy right in my hand and press it into my hand in a very specific way that says, I want to tug with you, which for me, that's exciting bit of training because I'm going to do that in one 20-minute hit just with me and the dog on the clicker. And she was actually there on this particular occasion. But I think, so interesting for me to do training like that where I'm like, okay, what's the fastest route to getting this done and as a finished behaviour? I think this is the other thing is if you're a really good experienced trainer and the behaviour side of it as well, of course, really important, but if you're just a brilliant functional trainer and you can get behaviour really fast and really reliably, why wouldn't you offer that skill? Why wouldn't you say, you know what, I can do in 20 minutes but it's going to take you 20 months to do? I can put hand on heart and say I left that session and that dog had learned, if you want to play tug, you get this specific toy, you bring it in this specific way, you push it into this specific hand, and then there is a little pause, a little delay while she gets herself organised, because humans are slow. So that all of that was done in the single session that I was there. And yet I know she'd have really struggled with that, even if I'd left her specific instructions, partly because of her actual ability, but also just partly because she doesn't have 35 years of dog training skill.
Yeah, that's it. And that's it. And this is what it's like, why are we still doing everything that we've always done?
We're making it the hardest route
Surely
possible.
we can't be the only people questioning these things. Maybe we're the only people questioning it out loud and doing it in a way that we are. But it's.
So here's my little slightly kind of thoughtful adjunct to that, which is that there are other people thinking about it, but they're not necessarily the people that we want to think about it.
Yeah. Yes, actually,
so
yes.
Already I'm seeing and hearing about people who have bought dogs. I mean, I have a colleague whose friend bought a dog for £35,000 because it came pre-trained.
Oh, wow.
So she bought herself pre-trained Mally, £35,000.
You know what, though? And I actually quite like that, because
what a bargain.
How
Do you know, she loved it so much she went back and got another one.
Really?
Do you know what people do, though? And if anything, I love it, because the amount of I don't want to say kickback, but I suppose it is a little bit, in that you can't possibly charge, I hate that word charge, but you can't possibly ask people to spend that much money on dog training. And we're like, well, if you look what happened in recent years with breeding, those dogs kind of went from £600 all the way up to $5,000.
But the whole industry did that. The whole part of that industry of breeding all did the same, and everyone just went, okay.
Yeah. For some reason, this industry goes, you're charging like £100.
I agree. And actually, if you were going to follow that model, then in that year or 2 years where it was kind of like boom and bust, wasn't it? But I don't know other I didn't, but I don't know other trainers who went, right, well, I'm going to increase my pricing, proportionately. Do you?
I did.
You did.
I did.
But I didn't.
Good for you. I didn't.
I went up. I think I went up from, I think I added like £700 on, and that was to deliver it on Zoom. And I had my best month.
Yeah.
Because I positioned it well. I had the value. I did all the things I was like, no, actually, there's a need here. People want it. I'm doing it in a value way. It wasn't just a case of I'm going to hike the fees up for the sake of it. It was let's do it as a big proposition, and then I've just carried it through, and that's where we've had all the success, and we turned your business around applying the same model.
Mm-hmm.
Now that's what we're teaching others.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I'm quite right too, because I think if you actually calculated the number of hours that any one of us has put into our CPD, our all the supporting resources that we require. I don't know about you, but on a daily basis, I am my own marketing expert, technician. It's not just about going out and doing good stuff with clients, is it? And their dogs. It's all the other aspects of, like, chief bottle washer. You literally, I probably do 9 people's roles every single day.
Yeah, and this is it, and this is where, again, this industry, for me, I love it so much, but it infuriates me, because I feel like we as an industry are getting left behind, and the public are starting to see those cracks, and they're going, do you know what? You're not as professional as you all make out. And this is where we don't help ourselves. We've said it before with simple things like, I can't even have a conversation with you to find out about your services. It's all back and forth email. I have to bank transfer you instead of being able to pay by my card. These little simple things, which you don't expect in any other industry, really, arguably trades, but that's a whole other conversation. And you still don't feel like, I don't want to send that amount of money over on a bank transfer. It just doesn't feel safe. And you could arguably be turning down business as well because somebody can't pay on a card.
Yep.
So all of these little nuances where we're like, why are we not acting as professional as we should be? and therefore the public will come along for that journey if we all collaborate, if we all do this together, because we are all in it for the love of dogs, to quote a program.
No, I mean, it's a really important point, and I think it's so fascinating that there are certain sectors of business which have just dragged their feet for such a long time. I mean, for example, I still can't book an appointment. That's not true, actually. I have two different vet practices that I use, and one of them I still can't book online for a basic appointment. It's like, what part of this don't you understand? You know, I do not want to have to ring up like a doctor's surgery and try and get an appointment, you know, trying to get through at 8 o'clock in the morning when you're dealing with all the other emergencies. I don't want to have to do that. You know, I just want to be able to go online and book an appointment, you know, because it's a book standard appointment. So I think you're absolutely right. I think, you know, we need to make it much easier for people, but also, yeah, just generally much more professional. And I also agree, I mean, we haven't talked very much today about what we think what the public perception is, and are the clients really getting what they need, and you know, is what they need now the same thing as they needed 2 years ago, let alone 20 years ago? Because actually I think it's very, very different. And I also think that, you know, from the kind of like the are they seeing the cracks? I think the answer is yes.
Yeah, no, I would agree. And even just our anecdotal Joe and Vicky science of the last few years of just gaining feedback from people when we're talking to them. They're like, do you know, you are the only people that actually rang me after I'd sent an email inquiry in. And actually, we're the only people that I couldn't even email because I had to book a call to speak to you. And I liked the fact that your website said, speak to a human.
Yes,
that's what our button says on our website, speak to a human.
Not just book a call, actually book a call. You know, it's just the little basic things like that, you know, that you're then not playing telephone tennis, and you know, it's so important. It's so important. And I think, you know, the more that we can try and encourage people, because actually the bottom line is that the good stuff, let's be positive, the good stuff is that the systems to do that now are so straightforward. You know, when I wanted to first put in an online booking system in on my website, I think I paid nearly £6,000 to have that done, and it was always glitchy. You know, whereas now they get something free off the shelf that, you know, and my grandmother could use. It's so easy. So, you know, I think there's a lot that has changed for the good that we can utilize in our businesses that you know, really are cost and time savers, and just, you know, make it easy for the client to find you and to book.
Yeah, I agree. And I think we're always saying as well, like, if you look at your expenditure and how much you're doing on your CPD, surely one course could wait, and you could invest that in your business so that you can earn more money, you can have more time for you to then invest in more CPD if you want it. And it gives you the ability to do that and actually implement the CPD properly, rather than just doing it for the sake of it and feeling like, again, this imposter syndrome gets bandied around, as we've said.
Yeah.
But choose wisely, like invest in yourself, invest in your business, because that is something that will return as a really solid asset further down the line. And it will avoid the burnout, the worry, the lack of professionalism. It will avoid all of that because you're investing in the right places at the right time, not just the things that you're interested in.
And here's another thing which I think is really, really helpful to think about, which is that if you are a veteran course goer or course signer upper, and I see this all the time, I run a 2-day hands-on practical course at Battersea Dogs Home, which is just amazing because we get the dogs out of the kennels and we just train for 2 days basically.
I can vouch for this program. It's awesome.
It still lights my fire. I can't tell you. I just love the 2 days because it's so exciting. It's like being in the amazing zone of proper training for 2 whole days. But what I'll say is that probably out of the 12 people we take on each run, there are probably going to be 8 people there who have done a lot of courses. You know, they've been doing courses after course after course after course, and they come and they're you know, we help them be practically proficient, because I think people need that as well. They need to feel that they can actually go out and do this. You know, it's not just all on paper, which we do also experience sometimes. But more importantly than that is that because I'm an NLP master practitioner as well, when I ask the right questions, what it nearly always turns out is that people do another course and another course and another course. because they don't feel like they're ready yet to do the work. But of course, that is such a self-fulfilling prophecy, because every course that you go on should teach you what you don't currently know. That's kind of the point of doing a course. And if that's the case, then you're always going to be behind yourself. You're always going to be going, well, I just need one more course and then I'll be ready, because you're never going to be ready otherwise. And so I often think that my role in that is to say to somebody, look, perhaps you need one of different things. Perhaps you need a community behind you that you feel comfortable and confident with. Perhaps you need a supervisor. Like in human counselling, you'd always have a supervisor. So perhaps you need the equivalent of that. You might call them a mentor. Or perhaps, actually, you need a bit of tough love. And what I'm going to tell you is you need to go out and book a client. And you need to, don't pick a really difficult separation distress case on your first go, or a dog, ripping each other apart case. Pick a puppy that, just basic, nice, honest, needy puppy. And, and do that, and do it well. And it will give you, way more in terms of you feeling qualified than any other piece of paper would. Because from that you can then build, and you can do another one and another one. And that's where, that's what will feed your heart and your soul. And then hopefully your kids as well.
Yeah, always good to feed the kids.
Yeah. But this is the other thing, that one of the first questions when somebody comes on board on one of our coaching programs, we ask them, what do you actually love doing? What is it you actually love? Like, let's not think about what should I do, and I've got this badge and this badge and this badge and I want to do all that stuff. Like, what do you really love? What lights your fire? And that's the thing that you're going to do and enjoy and attract these amazing people. So if people just stop and think about that for a second and go, do you know what? Do I really enjoy doing 15 different services like I used to? Or is there one particular thing that really gets you? Just do that.
Absolutely. And even, to be honest, ask yourself the question, do I really like dealing with the people? Because if the answer is no, then don't do it. You're not in the right fit. And I see that a lot, where people are really battling against that aspect of their own personality. Whereas actually they're delivering training, amazing.
Yeah. It is. It comes back down to, again, doesn't it? It's like, what does the client want? What do you want? Figure that out. Put it in a nice program with a little nice bow on top, and go, this is my offer. This is my program. This is my thing. Take it or leave it.
Yes.
Yeah. Effectively.
It'll do everything you need it to do if it's for the right person, and it feels right, and the fit's there, and the values are right, and all of that. If it's not, it's fine. It's absolutely fine.
Yeah, don't have to bend over backwards for everybody. In fact, we've just realised that this week, actually, having a bit of an experience ourselves with a client. We're like, do you know what? There's only so much we can do. And it's, we've accepted it, and we've sat okay with it, haven't we? So, yeah.
You're also very important to do that. I have a great laugh with some buddies of mine. We always say, how are the, well, she's got lots of children, so I say, how are the kids? And she goes, 4 out of 5. And that means 4 out of 5 are okay, one's not. I'm like, good ratio. We call that a win. She says, how are the dogs? And I've got 3 dogs, and I'm like, they're all well. And she's like, oh my God.
Full house.
Hit that moment. Hang on to that moment. And the reason why I say that is it's true. The more clients you see, the more, it's like, and the more white goods you own, that one will probably go wrong at some point. So, you have to kind of buffer yourself against that. That is not the one that you should remember on your deathbed. You should remember the 15,000 that you helped, as opposed to the one that was an absolute pain in the backside.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay
then. Right, so if you could pick then one top tip out of everything that we've kind of gone through, because I think there's loads of golden nuggets in today's
episode. There is.
But one top tip, whether we've covered it or not, what would it be for our listeners?
One top tip. So I think, it's difficult. Can I have 3? Well, I was gonna ask you one as well, so I'll give you one, which I think one top tip for when I say at the beginning, what I mean is you haven't been doing it for kind of 15 years already. So you're kind of at the beginning stages, or you're in growth. You're in growth stages. I think that my top tip would be to do something called reverse engineering. So look at where you want to be in a year's time, 2 years' time, or if you can, 5 years' time. But I know that's a stretch for most people. And imagine yourself running your business in, if we say, a year's time. What do you want it to look like? And by that, I don't just mean how much revenue you want to be earning, but how many hours do you want to be working? Who are the clients you want to be working with? Or do you not want to be working with clients? You might decide you want to do something entirely different. You might want to reach people in a different way. If you're able to put yourself in a little bit of time traveling and go forward a year or 2 years, what does your life look like around your business? And then it's so much easier to then, from that standpoint, look back and say, okay, so right now the step that I need to take towards that is not doing a grooming course. It's I need to, in order to be able to take another step towards this, I need to do this. I need to find this person. I need to research this on the internet. I need to read this article, and then take the steps towards that end goal, rather than sort of, as we mostly are taught to do, is take a step and then see where it leads you, take a step and see where it leads you. So I think that would probably be my best one. If I'd known that earlier, I think I would have transformed things much earlier in my life, and I'm still doing it. I still have a phase where I do that for myself, pretty much every year, and say, what do I want to be doing this time next year? What does that look like? Who's involved? Who have I surrounded myself with? That makes sense.
Yep. Love it.
I think we'd agree, wouldn't we?
Yep. Exactly what we do all the time. Yeah.
So I'm going to ask you one now,
Uh-oh.
which is kind of similar but different, which is that, bearing in mind what I said about there are quite a lot of people who have perhaps been in the industry for a longer period of time, and who are, these are probably my demographic. And as I mentioned to you about, another of my colleagues has said, to me this week, that's it, I'm off, I've got a full-time job doing something else somewhere else. And I think that's such a shame for the industry, because that means that the kind of the David Attenboroughs, if you like, are not there to support, perhaps also support people that are coming in. So what would be one top tip, or one thing that you would suggest that they might like to do or find helpful?
Ooh.
Listen to our podcast.
That's very true.
A neat media segue. I like that.
Clever. Yeah. Took a chance there.
No, but I think it's on the similar lines in that, and similar to what you were saying, I think it's about surrounding yourself with the right people. So it's finding people that are actually going to support you in your corner. And I think you have to look sometimes outside of your own little inner circle. You have to look outside of your industry. You have to look to people that are doing things differently and see how that feels for you.
I actually would, just interject in there. I think when you're in the dog industry, you think everything needs to come from the dog industry to learn. And actually, I've learned far more looking outside of the dog industry. And, we're in it and we're offering a mentoring service, but there are other mentors that we've got outside of this industry. And there are business models that work really well that you can easily transfer over. And I think it's that insular kind of thinking that people have. And if we could think outside the box a little bit more and broaden your kind of knowledge a little bit in that respect, that would really help.
And I think it's going down that collaborative route as well. And I would love to see more people taking that mentoring space up instead of maybe being in it as much in the delivery. And this is something that we are really big on this year. We are looking to collaborate with as many people as possible because we do have a big challenge on our hand in trying to uplift this industry that we're all so passionate about, but we can't do it alone. And so it's looking to, advice would be find some new people see how you can collaborate and look outside of the industry as well.
Cool. And I think I'm just going to add something that's helped me enormously is play with your own dogs.
Love it.
And I say that
cute as she jumps up in your lap.
She jumps up.
I say that quickly, but for example, not many people know, but I started out my whole dog thing by showing dogs for other people. So I was an international, junior handling, and then I handled other people's dogs in the show ring. Great fun, particularly if you're sort of quite an introverted child, as I was, because it wasn't about me, it was about the dog. And I've gone back to doing, pardon me, I've got burps from the dog. It wasn't me. I've gone back to showing for fun, and it is only for fun, and but showing with a behavioural head on, which is really interesting. So, of course, I've got a horrible advantage. I've trained the Koikahunja to wag his tail on cue when the judge comes past. I'm training the Japanese Spitz to hold her head in exactly the right way. So it's really good fun. And I think that's been a huge antidote for me, as I've found buddies and friends and a community, which is weirdly non-competitive because it's not about, my work. So I have fun with my own dogs. And I make sure that I create space for that, because otherwise, somebody once said to me, why didn't you do gardening for a living? And I said, what, and ruin another hobby?
Yeah. No, great advice, actually, isn't it? Yeah, love it.
But brilliant.
Last question for you, Sarah.
Oh.
Hearing about all of our message and our mission that we've got, who do you think would be the next? Basically, can you recommend anybody that would we could interview on the podcast?
Oh, that's a really good.
Help spread it even further.
A really good question. So, have you spoken? Well, I don't know. I'm a huge fan of lots and lots of different people. You put me on the spot. I could probably give you a list of about 10 or 15.
Anyone you personally know that you could help us get on?
So I have a wonderful colleague, Jo Smith, who is a cockapoo expert, and she's also calls herself the family dog trainer. And so her main roles are working with families and lots of kids and young kids and dogs together. And she's got just an amazing skill for that, which I admire so much. Just super calm, super gentle. Her collaboration with families is really, really amazing. So yeah, she would be up there for me.
I remember Jo. She was in my little cohort, I think.
She was. She's just all round fabulous person, and she just one of these people who's kind of really grounded, is just out there doing the work. Doesn't need the ego to shout out about it. It's just getting on with it, and does it in such an elegant way. She could be a real role model for a lot of people, I think.
Cool.
Amazing.
Well, we will hook us up and we'll get around.
Absolutely.
Oh, fabulous. Well, thank you ever so much for your time. Yeah, it's been amazing.
Very much enjoyed it. And if I can help in any other way, just give me a shout.
Yeah,
well, if people want to find out more about you, Sarah, where can they find you?
Yeah, so I've got a main website. Thankfully, I consolidated my 6 websites into one. That's a whole other story. And that's sarahwhitehead.com. And then I've got a big platform at Thinkific, which has got tons and tons of free resources and material there as well. And that's sarahwhitehead.thinkific.com. So
fabulous.
Amazing. We will get those links put in the show notes.
Fabulous.
Thank you once again. It's been lovely catching up.
Keep up the good work.
Thank you.
Thank
we'll
you very
try.
much.
See
See you later.
Bye. Cheers.
Bye.